We don't know which strategy worked on July Manel. What we do know is that for her, 30 years of smoking was not, in the end, a sterling idea, nor was it an international passport to pleasure. She didn't discover gold like Benson and Hedges promised, and she didn't end up slim and carefree. July died a miserable death, without her mantle of black hair, unable to eat or talk or recognise her loved ones.
They always say that where your pito is, you always come back to rest.
In Kiwi neighbourhoods, the lives of Asian women are being trampled.
They should listen to these things and just stop it.
Women who thought they were coming to this country for a better life.
My husband used to say, I'll make things so difficult for you that you will have no other alternative but to commit suicide.
The man is the head of the household. It's his prerogative to treat his family the way he wants to. And the fact that his behavior, which may include being abusive to the wife and children, is accepted.
The truth of it is, it's not until the beating nearly kills the battered woman that things start to change. Wendy, who'd been beaten by her husband throughout her pregnancy and then while trying to protect her baby son Dwayne, knew this time if she didn't get out, she'd die.
I had left side pneumothorax, which means punctured lung, broken ribs, and my neck was fractured.
The bright and bubbly young bride from India had been reduced to a broken shell of her former self in just a few months. From a cruel twist in the genetic loop it came. A wrinkle in the DNA coil which has cursed one Māori tribe for generations. The victims, they're boys, who suddenly went from healthy children to broken young men, losing every sense in their body and finally dying. It was a medical mystery that cried out for a solution. Then from America came hope of a cure from a man whose own son's life hung in the balance. But it also brought fierce debate. More than 20 years on, what became of those who took the leap of faith to save their sons? Did the answer really lie in Lorenzo's oil?
I can remember going to one of the boys' funerals. Don't ask me which one because I was still young. And I thought it was very sad, and they packed his clothes, his toys in the grave.
Just thought they were sick, that's all. Because one day they were running around and the next day they were dead.
From her clothes line of children's outfits, each representing a murdered child, to her grueling Facebook pages, Jane Alvarez is one of the most passionate people we've ever met.
Every one of you have a voice. Every one of you have a voice. I started writing letters, and they would call me and say, we can't print your letter, it's too graphic. And I said, well, child abuse, but we use the word cruelty, is graphic.
It came as no surprise to us that Jane Alvarez's main allies in the fight to highlight child abuse are a bunch of the meanest looking bikers you've ever seen.
Oh. This one has Todd seeds in it. Yes.
The members of the local chapter of Bikers Against Child Abuse, BACA, had just dropped in for lunch. Now these guys are staunch. They take care of scared kids who have to go to court to testify against people who've abused them. Sometimes the bikers stay with and protect kids for many days. This school in the Cambodian capital Phnom Penh is different. Its ranks swelled with children who have survived human trafficking and other abuse.
we have to focus on the ones that we have in our care. And I believe to the core of my being that one person can change a nation.
Sue Hannah, a self-described ordinary Kiwi from the back blocks of the South Waikato.
Nelson Mandela, Martin Luther King, Mother Teresa. The individuals in this world can make a huge difference.
Together with her best friend Sue Taylor. That's right, two Sues from Te Awamutu. They're working minor miracles across a still broken country.
I think that people in this country, there is a very high level of trauma, and this is generational trauma.
Sue Hannah and Sue Taylor are frontline workers in the organisation known as Hagar, dedicated to assisting people in countries like Cambodia, especially those who've been the victims of sex trafficking and abuse. This is a country in which an estimated 20,000 children under the age of 10 are working as sex slaves or domestic slaves. Mark Holmes was one of those guys who seemed to enjoy everything. Behind the camera or in front of it, he lived at top speed.
Okay, this is our practice room. I'm going to show you around.
For years, he played his guitar at gigs all around the world, like his life depended on it. You see, Mark was a missionary, a muso missionary. While becoming a rock star, he fell in love with Suzanne. And while Mark and Suze were on the road making music for kids in Poland and Germany, they had 4 little girls of their own. The MRI scan in April 2000 showed a massive tumour. The guy who had wowed the crowds with his musical flair got devastating news.
They said I had 18 months to 2 years to go until I was going to snuff it, basically.
So we try and include them. I try and get them to wake him up from his sleeps and things like that. I think that's important. Even as he gets sicker, I'm going to try and include them in his care the whole way, because I think that will be part of their healing.
In sleepy places in Waikato, 2 families nurture the same dream. A dream to have a healthy baby. But it's not that simple. Their existing children are affected by a cruel inherited disease, which may blight the life of any new baby.
I couldn't bring a child into this world with CF again.
2 families setting out to find a way to ensure their next child has a better chance.
I don't even know what I'm going to tell Liam when he grows up. We had to have a child like this because we didn't want to have another child with cystic fibrosis. I don't know how that's going to make him feel.
People making some of the hardest choices anyone will ever confront. And so ends a 3-year journey for 2 families. Each now has 1 child with a major health issue, one that'll continue to fill many hours and days with anguish. But each now also has a healthy baby. The road ahead has become much brighter for all of them. In a hard-to-find corner of an Auckland graveyard, Grace Adams is finally coming to terms with how her sister Rebecca lost her life. It's part of Grace's personal crusade, a determination to help the world learn from an awful lesson. Grace's sister Rebecca perished along with 81 others in the fire which destroyed the Branch Davidian compound in Waco, Texas 6 years ago. Also among the dead, 2 more of Grace's relatives. Tonight, from out of the ashes of Waco comes Grace's own story. A story of how she herself was imprisoned in the compound, how she made the escape to a new life, and how she finally returned to Waco to find out why her closest sister had apparently chosen a martyr's death. Grace Adams wanted to know if Dan could shed light on what happened on the final awful day at Mount Carmel.
I had a sister in there and 2 relations. Do you have any idea why they would want to stay in there?
A truck drove up and 2 men got out and rushed up to our car and forced their way into the car and held us at gunpoint. They drove us outside of town to an isolated area where they stopped the car and forced Mark into the trunk of the car. And They ended up driving us from Madisonville, Louisiana, to the east side of Mobile, Alabama. And that's where they took Mark out of the trunk of the car, and they took him back into the woods and tied him to a tree and tortured him and shot him in the back of the head at close range.
Disoriented and dazed, Debbie could barely comprehend what had happened to her and her boyfriend.
They raped me repeatedly, the two men did, and mostly did a lot of emotional torture to me. They would pretend they were going to let me go and then laugh at me when they would see that my hopes would get up.
A light went on for Debbie the night they took Robert Lee Willie from his cell on death row to the execution chamber. She wondered, what if this execution doesn't make me feel better?
And I think that finally I realized that there needed to be more. Somehow I realized it wasn't just about what happened, what happens to Robert Lee Willie, that it was something bigger and more powerful than that needed to change for me.
One Sunday in August 2008, something happened that turned my family upside down. In the midst of that chaos, I picked up a camera. O'Connor, this video is for you, so that you can remember what happened while we were bringing you back to life. Each baby step along the way felt like a mountain that had been climbed, but at the top, there was just another one. The day you could breathe properly on your own was huge.
We don't think he's quite going to talk just yet, just because he's still recovering from his wee battle heat. So, at the moment, this is great. This is a good step.
I love that at last you get to hang around kids your own age and still get plenty of opportunity to work on all the therapy you need to heal.
Good man. Stand out.
Looking back, we just can see the progress O'Connor's made, and he's just such a miracle. We just are so thankful to God that he's still with us.
Ultrasound images revealed that the baby wasn't forming properly. Doctors diagnosed anencephaly, a rare condition where the brain and skull don't develop as they should. There are no treatments for anencephaly. Claudia was told her baby would die, probably before or shortly after birth. It was a hope that led Claudia to make an unusual decision. Most anencephalic pregnancies are terminated, but Claudia had carried her child to full term. The journey wasn't easy for anyone.
And I would do it all over again just to see him and to see my daughter rejoicing, like holding the baby.